the marketing that's happening around the drama. So this is the movie starring Zendaya and Robert Pattinson. They're launching what is essentially this immersive wedding campaign that's treating their April 3rd release as a real wedding. On Valentine's Day, they dropped like a functional wedding website for the characters, Emma Harwood and Charlie. You're able to read pretty much all the details of how they came together, FAQs about the dress code, which I thought was like really cool because it's like one of the things that I'm noticing with like movies and like events is that if you get people to dress up in a certain way, like have a, uniform, like we saw with the Barbie movie, dressing all in pink, we saw with the Minions movie, dressing up in like suits, it gets people to think of it as a more of an event. I'll be curious to see if people actually like really dress up. But one of the things that stood out to me was that they have this RSVP function where you can, sign up and have the Google Calendar drop on your own Google Calendar to tell you, hey, this is when the movie's premiering and give you that reminder. They also include Boston travel recs, which are kind of show you a little bit more detail about who the characters each are. And it really showed the voice of like who the characters are going to be, which I thought was like, really fun. This follows the wedding announcement that they did in the Boston Globe. I think what's like really notable here is that the campaign is centering around the characters, kind of like we saw around Marty Supreme, right? Though that one blurred the lines a little bit more because that like, is this Timothy or is this like, Marty Supreme, his character? And I think kind of, where people landed was like, well, he's very much like his character, right? Because like he was going for it. Even the director, Josh Safdie, came out and said, like, I wrote this specifically for Timothy. So I think we're going to start seeing a lot more blurring of like the character and like the actors, which I think actually makes it easier for the actor, right? Because then they can kind of go and do like a lot of more of like the promotional tour as their character and not so much as themselves and have to say like who they are and put themselves out there. I did see recently another marketing thing that like stuck out to me was Ryan Gosling is out kind of promoting Project Hail Mary, and he's about to be on SNL. And so he did like a FaceTime with Mikey Day, and they're kind of like going back and forth for like Palentine's Day. And at first, you can't really tell if it's like a skit or if it's like a real thing. And then it turns out that it is a skit because like Ryan Gosling is like, breaking character throughout. But it's like, starting to like blur the lines. And then I saw that his partner, Ava Mendes, came out and said that like the only partner or the only other of his co-stars that she's been jealous of is Rocky, right?
Mm.
And not like Rachel McAdams from The Notebook or, Michelle Williams from Blue Valentine. I think it's like really showing that like we're starting to see celebrities market movies in a completely different way. And that's kind of like fun and unusual. And that's why it's like working for me because it is different, right? Um, I'm sure we're still gonna get like the normal stuff of like, the Zendaya, method dressing where she's like dressing up like her character. Is it gonna be like wedding attire because she's supposed to be more of a normal person versus like in other movies, she's like, she was like the tennis star, she's in Dune, right? So it's like very closely tied to like her character. So Trisha, have you seen this campaign? What do you think about it?
I have seen this campaign, and I feel like it's on brand with, or rather, it's on trend with a lot of the recent movies we have seen come out post the pandemic, where there is a very sort of intentional drive to get people outdoors and be like, come experience this end to end. People feel like they're part of something more premium.
Yeah, A24 is like really carving out a like marketing strategy where it's not just about the movies, but now I'm like, I want to see how A24 is going to market something, right? Marty Supreme, like them dropping that like Zoom call with like Timothy Chalamet and like their marketing team, right? Not knowing what the line was between what was fake in like the Zoom call versus what was real. And so here's the same thing, right? Where it's like they have a fully developed website that you can go and like click around and see like the photos and see, all of this. And then now it's making me think, well, what else are they gonna do? Right. I think I saw someone post yesterday, like I'm expecting like a Vogue wedding shoot. And what's starting to happen is that now all these other companies are incentivized to welcome them and do these partnerships because they're earning more attention themselves, right? Like all the stuff that Timothy Chalamet was doing with like the merch shop and Statue of Liberty and then the Empire State Building, right? Like it's bringing attention to these like cultural landmarks and was making it very much about New York. And so this one, it's like they had the name of the photographer, they tagged them, and then the photographer on his page had like photos of their engagement shoot, right? So it's like really blurring this line of like what's real, what's not. And then making that be the story that goes about it, right? And then that's what people are talking about. They're talking about the mystique and like the how real it seems, right? So like the Boston Globe announcement, like people were, posting that like, oh my God, look, like this is it's a real announcement in the Boston Globe. And so they're posting about that online. It's getting a lot of earned media because the marketing campaign is so good, and it's that word of mouth just keeps spreading because now people are being detectives, right? They're going out and finding out all the little Easter eggs that was dropping about the characters. And people are then posting about that on social media. So it's creating more of this like buzz loop because people are talking about the Easter eggs. And then, showing kind of like how real the whole thing is. And I think this really worked here because Zendaya and Robert Pattinson are some of the most famous celebrities out there right now. So it's making it more about the movie than it is about them, which is always kind of like the hard part with promoting movies, right? Because, oftentimes you get oversaturated with like the celebrity that like it just becomes about the celebrity. They're both in very famous relationships, and nothing is coming out about that. It's all about the movie, which I think is like the brilliancy of this campaign, and that's all that we're talking about instead of, what happens for other campaigns that, they're on top of.
Yeah. I mean, I guess like also adding to that, we live sort of like in this ever fast, ubiquitous bubble where they're just trends. You hop from one trend to
Mhm.
another. I don't remember the last time, that the entire world went crazy about one movie, the cult favorites, Mean Girls and things like that. People would talk
Yeah.
about that time and
Yeah.
again for years together, even today. And it was
Mhm.
never about who the actor was, but more about what the plot was. And, on Wednesdays we wear pink is still very much relevant even today. I do suppose like in the sort of noisy environment that we live in are these is A24 and even the brands themselves trying to kind of like stand out, make a noise that lasts beyond just the movie itself, and that's why
Mhm.
all the efforts towards marketing. We've seen that, but in contrast, we've seen this with the shows that take place on Netflix or whatever, like Bridgerton.
Mhm.
People love these shows, and you don't have to like hyper sell it to them like, oh my god, you got to come and watch this because XYZ whatever. No, they're
Mhm.
hooked on from season 1. They're gonna be your, loyalist to the end of it. So
Mhm.
I guess, like, the big theater does have a lot to sort of, like, compete against.
Yeah, I think a thing here that also stands out that I've talked about before is this idea of world building, right? Where it's like, you mentioned these two like Netflix shows, and those are two very big worlds that they've kind of built out and that people are kind of committed to now because they like the characters, but now it's like they care about the world itself and like how having that kind of, come to life. So that was why I called them out when they did their commercial about like the 10 worlds, where it's like, okay, Netflix is going all in on their worlds and like using that as a way to separate themselves, right? So it's like, what can they do with that? Obviously they don't have a Disneyland the way that Disney has like their world building, right? But Netflix can kind of do that online, and I can see them doing like experiences, going forward with the drama. I think they're trying to make the wedding be the experience, right? It's like dress up and like come. I'll be curious to see what else like they can do. Like, are they going to have catered food at like some of like the big city like theaters in like, New York or LA. Like I can totally see that happening. Or in Boston where this movie is taking place, right? Like in something like that where it's like more immersive and it gets people to participate, which will then get more buzz because people are already like in it and are feeling more like attached to it because they've been part of like the whole thing from like the wedding announcement to like this wedding website. Like, what are the next steps of a wedding that they can like, get us involved in because we're already in it and paying attention, to everything. But what we can learn from this is that when, your stars are like overexposed, they're appearing in 3 films together just this year, which is kind of wild. We have to kind of separate them from like the Dune mystique and the Odyssey mystique because like those are like the 2 big movies that most people are going to go watch just because who they are. Not It's not even about Robert Pattinson and Zendaya, right? It's about like the movies themselves. But this is like one movie that's like a small indie film. But it's like, okay, well, how do we get attention? Well, let's make it not about them. Let's make it about the characters and like make it about the wedding. So the mystery of it is what's getting people to pay more attention to it. And then I think the fact that it is an immersive campaign is really working for them because nobody else has done this, right? I think part of what we're risking of like having these ideas is like you have to be the first to do it for it to like really hit, right? I don't see another movie that's going to be able to like, do this, but maybe there's another type of event that they could glom onto that becomes like the thing that, gets us involved. So I really like that, A24 is like really pushing the line here of like what they're doing. And I think what's starting to happen now is that it's less about the movie itself, but now about A24, right? Like now I'm expectant of any movie that A24 is going to come out with and what their marketing campaign is going to be. And I just want to see what the marketing is going to be. Like what new idea are they going to come out with? Because right now, honestly, they're like the movie studio that's doing it the best. That's like, really putting, a different spin on like how they're promoting their movies. It's not just the same old where you like, do the teaser trailer and do then the trailer. Even right now, like we just saw the drop of like the Mandalorian and Grogu film, and it's like, you're kind of still doing the same old marketing shtick that you're used to, right? Like, do something better, Disney. Like, you have more money, you have more sway, and like A24 is out here kicking your butt because like they're coming up with new and creative ideas. So I think that shows like a lot of like what smaller companies can do compared to the big ones because you are able to be more creative and it necessitates you coming up with new ideas, right? Another example of this is that we're seeing with Game of Thrones, a Night of the Seven Kingdoms, where it was just shown yesterday that they have about 25% of the budget of both Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon, right? And so like what they're doing with it is, they put in the fog and just made it so that people can see less. But the way that they're talking about it is like, well, we wanted you to feel how people on the ground actually feel, right? So there's ways to like make it about the story, and have that like be the story and not just that, oh, well, we only have 25% of the budget and use as an excuse to not do things as great as you could do them, right? So that's, something to think about. Like, what are creative ways that you as a company can like do things, even with less of a budget, with like 25% of the budget of like the big guys, and do something that's interesting for you and for like your consumer, because that's what matters, like your consumer, and then get them talking about it to the rest of the people.
Yeah, I mean, that's very well put. I don't think I have much to add to that.